Welcome to Withum's 2021-2022 Global Summit. This year, we have a podcast series with Withum's international team members discussing doing business in regions around the world with our HLB member firms, our clients, and our colleagues. Listen in for discussions to hear how they transact business in multiple countries, to learn about changes in their home country environments, as well as about the culture, cuisine, and must-see sites in each region.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Calvin Young. I'm manager here at Withum's International Tax Practice, and joining me today is Rajesh Tripathi, a principal in our International Tax Group, and we also have a special guest with us today, Luis Lamba, a director at HLB Puerto Rico, which is a member firm in our HLB Global Network. Today, we're here to discuss just considerations for U.S. citizens and businesses contemplating relocating to Puerto Rico, as well as touching on some of the tax benefits that may be available to them if they do indeed move to Puerto Rico. So moving into some of the topics that we're going to discuss today, the first big question, why would people be interested in moving to Puerto Rico? As far as the location, weather, and quality of life, there's also business. They have a strong business environment in Puerto Rico. But I'll ask Luis, who lives in Puerto Rico, to discuss some of his thoughts on why would anyone want to move to Puerto Rico.
Hi, Calvin. Thanks for having me. Let me give you a brief description about Puerto Rico, so people will get a better feeling of where we at and why Puerto Rico has become a little more attractive in the last couple of years. A quick summary: Puerto Rico is basically a self-governing territory of the United States that is located in the northeastern Caribbean. Okay. We're east of the Dominican Republic and west of the U.S. Virgin Islands, okay? Puerto Rico has around 3.5 million, the population is about 3.5 million people. And, the weather temperature is between 80 and 90 degrees all year around. That has made to Puerto Rico a competitive jurisdiction because Puerto Rico is for U.S. tax purposes considered a foreign jurisdiction, but on the other hand, it's also protected, with the U.S. Constitution. I mean, Puerto Rico, uses the U.S. Postal Service, uses the same U.S. banking system, and we got, there's also federal law enforcement agencies in Puerto Rico. So even though Puerto Rico, it's a foreign jurisdiction, you get all the protection as if you were any other state.
So it sounds like there's Puerto Rico itself has well built up infrastructure as far as the U.S. federal government in Puerto Rico for those certain protections.
That is correct.
I see. So as far as who is moving to Puerto Rico, in your experience, what type of client has been contacting you with the interest of looking into moving to Puerto Rico?
Yeah, a little history. Puerto Rico used to be well known because of its manufacturing back from the 70s to the 90s. Because, there was one specific code section in the U.S. code that gave it a huge break to the pharmaceuticals, and they were all down in Puerto Rico. But that section got repealed in 1995, and Puerto Rico has been looking since then something to try to jumpstart its economy. And what happens was back in 2012, Puerto Rico came out with the two new tax incentive laws called the Act 20 and the Act 22. And, the Act 22, which is basically known as the Investors Act, gives a huge break to individuals that has a lot of capital gains in their tax returns, because Puerto Rico basically exempts everybody from paying capital gains in Puerto Rico, and by being a bona fide resident of Puerto Rico, you get to exclude those capital gains from the federal return. We'll talk a little bit about that a little later in this conversation. But that has been huge in the last couple of years, where people from like the cryptocurrency investors and people that have a lot of stake in the market has attracted a lot of people. Obviously has a huge incentive to move to Puerto Rico. And the other, I mentioned Act 22. We got the Act 20, which basically it was designed to promote people to move to Puerto Rico, where you provide a service in Puerto Rico and your customers are located outside of Puerto Rico. And when you move, when you export services from Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico government will give you pay only a tax rate of 4% on that income that you generate in Puerto Rico. And those two laws that were enacted in 2012 has been what really triggered in the last couple of years the amount of people that are moving to Puerto Rico.
I see. So just based on those two fairly recent acts that Puerto Rico enacted, it seems like due to the tax benefits, a lot of cryptocurrency investors or tech entrepreneurs, and as well as high net worth individuals are the main audience that is interested in moving to Puerto Rico. And it seems like if they do, they could get the benefit of all beneficial tax rules from the interaction with Puerto Rico and the U.S.
Yep, that's correct.
So as far as how would you describe the business environment in Puerto Rico?
Well, it's quite unique because, like I said, Puerto Rico is part of the U.S., but it's considered a foreign jurisdiction for U.S. tax purposes. So there's a lot of and at the same token, there's a lot of code sections within the U.S. code that apply specifically to Puerto Rico. That when you combine what Puerto Rico has enacted and some of the sections that are like I said specifically to Puerto Rico, it has created a lot of opportunities to different kinds of businesses in Puerto Rico. And obviously, like I said, you got the protection of being on a U.S. territory where basically, you're using U.S. dollar, the accounting system, the banking system, everything is basically just like moving to any other state. Okay. Even, for example, if you decide to start a manufacturing facility in Puerto Rico, it actually will have the label made in USA for all purposes. So you can get the benefit of being on a low tax bracket jurisdiction and still be able to manufacture products, label it, made in USA. So it's quite a unique environment for investors. And by the way, Puerto Rico, we're talking about the Act 20 and 22, but Puerto Rico has an array of different tax incentive laws that cover agriculture, manufacturing, also for the hospitality business. So it doesn't have to be the Act 20 and 22. There could be also some other tax incentive laws that you could be able to use if you decide to make Puerto Rico your place of work.
I see. So it does sound like there are a lot of business benefits to having a business located in Puerto Rico, and just having that interaction between the U.S. and Puerto Rican tax rules. That there's a lot of benefits for a U.S. resident, U.S. person to either establish a business down there or to move down there themselves. So on that point, what are some of the ask Raj, what are some of the benefits for someone moving to Puerto Rico as far as from the U.S. perspective?
So, Calvin, the question about what happens when a U.S. citizen or an individual is trying to move to Puerto Rico, and as Luis just mentioned, that people have in their mindset that, hey, if I move to Puerto Rico, it's a foreign jurisdiction, it's a foreign country. Do I have to give up my citizenship? And what Section 877A of the IRC code talks about is whenever a U.S. citizen or permanent resident is renouncing their citizenship, or a green card holder is trying to give up their green card, you have to pay an exit tax. And what that means is that basically, the exit tax rule will apply, and they will have to follow the rules of Section 877 and make sure that they are, paying the exit tax to the, and that's one of the scary part for whenever somebody's moving to Puerto Rico, that, hey, do I have to pay exit tax? But in our case, when a U.S. person is moving to Puerto Rico, the exit tax rule does not apply, or they don't have to, because they're not relinquishing their citizenship, So the other question about when a person is moving to Puerto Rico, the question they have in their mind is whether, whether what happens to their, taxable income. So what Section 933 says that any income derived from Puerto Rico sources, they're usually excluded from the U.S. citizen's gross income. And what that means is whenever a U.S. taxpayer or a bona fide resident of Puerto Rico is going to be a taxable, it has for the entire tax year, is going to be a resident of Puerto Rico, he can exclude from his U.S. federal income tax, the Puerto Rican source interest and dividends, and also probably the capital gains income. Now, what is the definition of the bona fide, residence? Bona fide residence is basically somebody who is satisfying the presence test, who also does not have a tax from outside Puerto Rico during the entire year, and does not have a closer connection to the U.S. or a foreign country for the entire taxable year. So what IRC Section 933 basically says or provides an exception with respect to Puerto Rican residents. Individuals who are bona fide residents of Puerto Rico for the entire taxable year, other than the federal employees, can exclude from the gross income for federal income tax purposes, and those bona fide residents are therefore exempt from federal income taxes. So this is a very positive initiative or mindset of people who are planning to move to Puerto Rico, that they will not be taxed in the US, But there are certain rules that you have to apply, and you have to qualify for those rules.
Thanks, Raj. So that sounds like there's as far as from the US perspective, there are a lot of positives as far as a U.S. person that moves to Puerto Rico and lives there for the year. So
absolutely, there's only one thing that they'll have to make sure that you'll have to first you'll have to make sure that you are a bona fide resident. That's the first requirement for the entire taxable year. And then the second thing is you'll also have to make sure that you comply with the, IRC Section 937, and your income must constitute Puerto Rican source income. So you have to make sure you're getting Puerto Rican source income to exclude that from the federal, your federal tax, take the federal tax benefit.
I see. And earlier, Luis mentioned the Act 20 and Act 22, the tax benefits under those two acts in Puerto Rico. Could you expand on those a little bit more, and then also maybe talk about some of the other key requirements that people should know if they are contemplating a move to Puerto Rico?
Sure. Yeah, the Act 20, which is commonly known for export services, like I said, you establish your business out here, you start servicing, customers outside of Puerto Rico. You get taxed, you pay tax only at 4% in Puerto Rico. And if you're a Puerto Rico resident, okay, that dividends that comes out of the company is tax free. Okay, so there's no double tax. It's only a flat 4%. Okay, so that's a huge break for we have seen call centers, we have seen fund managers that are moving to Puerto Rico just to be able to reduce their overall effective tax rate at 4%. The Act 22, which obviously is the main attractive, is the capital gains. We were just talking. The capital gain has to be sourced in Puerto Rico, and obviously, if you become a bona fide resident of Puerto Rico, the sourcing is determined by the residents of the taxpayer. So basically, everything becomes Puerto Rico source. However, there are some specific rules that needs to be followed when you move to Puerto Rico with respect to any positions that you had prior to moving to Puerto Rico. One note that I wanted to mention with respect to the residency requirements is obviously you have to commit to become a resident of Puerto Rico. It's not like you want to live a dual resident. I must be part of the U.S. and part in Puerto Rico. I mean, you technically have to commit to become a Puerto Rico resident because obviously the IRS has some strict rules, and they will probably, they will follow up and check in that people are complying with this residency requirement. Like we just recently said, you have to be here the entire taxable year, but I just wanted to make a quick comment on that. It's that, for the transition year, let's say you cannot make it here by January 1st, okay? There's an exception to the rule that if you're here in Puerto Rico more than 183 days of the year and you meet the other two tests, okay, the closer connection and the tax home test, basically the IRS will let you to be considered as if you were here since January 1st, as long as you stay as a bona fide resident of Puerto Rico the next 2 taxable years. So if for any reason you cannot make it by January 1st, but you comply, you can use that exception to be able to use the benefit of Section 933, 2022, if you consider moving for next year. That's basically it. I mean, any other questions, Carol, you want to ask me?
So my question to you, Luis, is I have a U.S. entity, and my U.S. entity has an IP part in the U.S., and I decide to set up a legal entity in Puerto Rico, a subsidiary, and I hire 1 or 2 employees in Puerto Rico. And the purpose of my subsidiary is to target customers in Puerto Rico. And I have one customer, A, in Puerto Rico, with whom I signed the contract from the U.S., and my Puerto Rican subsidiary will provide support on the use to the customers in Puerto Rico who are going to use my IP, which is sitting in the US. Do you see any withholding tax for the services that my Puerto Rican entity will provide to the customers in Puerto Rico? Or will there be any other withholding tax on the IP that is going to be used by those customers in Puerto Rico?
Well, any payments for the use of the IP will not be subject to any withholding in Puerto Rico. Okay, with respect to the Puerto Rico side and the work that is the subsidiary is going to be doing in Puerto Rico with the Puerto Rico based customers. Okay, technically, if it is a business that you're providing services to, okay, there is a withholding on services on 10% that is required when a business provides any kind of business to another business. Okay. However, there's a way to mitigate that withholding. If you're a new subsidiary in Puerto Rico, there's a way to get a waiver for 3 years to avoid that withholding in Puerto Rico. And after those 3 years, there's some other ways to try to avoid that withholding. But that's the only thing that needs to be, that you have to be cautious, because obviously that 10% is on the top line of the amount that is being billed. Okay, and just to clarify, that withholding is actually an estimated tax payment. Okay, that at the end of the year is going to get reporting on the Puerto Rican version of the 1099 that you're going to be able to use as an estimated tax payment on your tax return.
Okay, thank you, Luis.
So based on the discussion today, and I just wanted to thank you again, Luis, for joining us to discuss all these benefits and the rules in Puerto Rico and the interaction with the U.S. tax laws. But it sounds like there could be significant tax benefits on capital gains and other income from services, as well as lifestyle benefits for the right person who would move to Puerto Rico. And I think one of the key factors that we have to stress here is that to take advantage of the Puerto Rican tax benefits, the individual, they have to follow the rules. And I guess it sounds like the key requirement on the individual side is that this person actually has to move to Puerto Rico and live there to satisfy that bona fide resident requirement. So based on that, if anyone listening to this podcast is interested in exploring more about moving to Puerto Rico and any other considerations and benefits that could be achieved by moving there, please reach out to either myself, Rajesh, or Luis so that we could discuss further.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed your virtual trip to another region as much as I did. Please join us again as we continue to roam the world.